because I'm going to talk about a fresh start, but I'm also going to talk about Peter. Peter's one of the apostles from Jesus's inner circle. Matter of fact, when we see Jesus, he's like one of the first apostles called when Jesus has this interaction with Peter. And Peter is just a fisherman. And fishermen in this century, when they're coming up, these guys were rough. These guys were brash. These guys had to be strong. These guys had to be able to go. They were these giant fishing boats. They were in like these 20, 30-foot boats, and they would be out and like catching things. I mean, it was not an easy life. I kind of thought about it. I remember my dad talking about like when he was a kid. I grew up South Jersey, outside of Philly, and my dad worked in the shipyard coming out of high school. And he said, man, you just work with the roughest people back there. Like if they got mad at you, they didn't just say, hey, you know what? Let's just have a meeting with HR. We're going to talk about what you said and did because you didn't follow through. So I'm going to need you to sign this, and next time you're not going to do. Like they would just like all of a sudden you might be out there and they just drop something next to you, like a pallet of things coming off a ship, and it'd be like, that's your warning. But anyway, we're talking about new things, and when Peter's coming on the scene, he's a rough guy. And I hope you see this today as we talk about fresh starts. The truth is God's no respecter of persons. It doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done. God's a God of fresh starts. And I believe with all my heart that this is a on-time word, because God hit me with this week and having some conversations, and it's no accident that you're here this morning, because some of you, this is your new day and this is your new start. And so Peter finds himself in a position where they're fishing, they're out, Jesus is talking, Jesus gets on the boat and he's like, hey, listen, I want you to launch out into the deep. We're gonna catch some fish. And Peter's like, nah, we haven't caught anything all day. And Jesus is like, yeah, throw it on the other side of the boat. So they throw it on the other side. All of a sudden they catch all this fish. And they come back, and it has this incredible exchange with Peter, which I'm gonna talk about, because that one incident, that one moment changes his life. How many of you know with God, it can take 1 minute to turn your life around? It can take one encounter with Jesus Christ to change your life. If you see Pastor Travis standing on this stage, you know after you listen to him long enough, he didn't start on this stage. He came from a low place. Jesus found him where he was, but God saw him where he wanted to take him. And I want to encourage you this morning that you might see yourself where you are, but can I just stop by and tell somebody this morning that God sees you so much further than you see yourself. He sees you down the road. He sees you accomplishing more. He doesn't see you just in this low place, but it does take action on our part, and it does take a fresh start. And if we're going to grow into new things, then it means we're gonna have to be open to new things. And that's my first point, is that we have to start with accepting something new. We have to be open to new things. If we're gonna be growing, we have to be open to new things. God's all powerful and all knowing. And the minute you put your life into his hands, or the minute you begin to open yourself up to God, you really need to be able to, you're also saying, I am open to new things. And I know for some of you, you're like, I don't even like new things. Some of you don't even like new restaurants. Like you've been going to the same thing. Some of you like the same clothes. Like I saw you in it last week, and it's fine. I'm not joking. I'm glad you're here. But some of you I'm just joking. Kevin, I see you. No, I'm just kidding. He's gonna kill me for that. But in Isaiah, it says this. Isaiah, there's a scripture, and it says in your outline, 43:18. He says, "Forget what happened long ago. Don't think about the past. I'm creating something new. There it is, don't you see it? I put roads in the desert and streams in thirsty lands." And when you think about starting in a fresh start, to start means the point in time or space at which something has its origin. It's the beginning of a thing. It's the opening of a new opportunity. And I want to encourage you as we're stepping into this, I want to challenge you, how open are you? I know that you're here, so you have some interest. Maybe somebody made you come here, but some of you have been coming here. And as you're going into this next season, how open are you to what God might want to do through you? Because life isn't just about me and what I get, but it is about living life and what I give. Because whatever I get and keep will die, and when I die, it's gone. But whatever I give out will go and continue to give when I leave this earth. And that's what I want for my life. I don't want to just occupy space. I don't want to just breathe air in and out. I don't even want to just make a lot of money, although I do want to make money. want to live out the purpose and why God put me here, but I have to be open to new things. Let me challenge you. Maybe you've been in a relationship in a while. Are you open to new things? There was a couple that was hiking. Kevin and Bree, they were hiking, and as they were hiking, they went out for a while, and they were out for a long time. It was over, 4 hours. So they stopped, like, we need to get something to eat. So they stopped, sat down, got out some fried chicken, and, no, I'm sorry, they didn't have fried chicken. Who eats fried chicken on a hike? I'm sorry. They got protein bars. So anyway, they sit down, and, I would eat fried chicken on a hike. I'm not gonna, I am in church. I would do it. I would do it. It was like Lolo's, it would. And I would have a waffle. I know that's nasty, but I would do it. You gotta feed the engine. So they sit down, and as they sit down, all of a sudden they're sitting down there, they're chilling, they're drinking, getting rehydrated. All of a sudden, Kevin gets bit right in the butt, rattlesnake. So they're freaking out. Bree jumps on the phone. She's like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? She's calling 911. What do I do? And the operator's like, look, you are so far out. Like, I know you have signal, but it's gonna be a while. You're gonna have to actually do something you're not gonna wanna do. I'm gonna need you to suck the venom out. Yeah, I know. I didn't write the story. I'm just the delivery. So she's like, so she kind of goes away. She's like, no, is there another way? There's gotta be something else you guys can do. Like, there's just gotta be something. She's like, the operator, I'm just like, I'm so sorry, you guys are too far. There's nothing else. You're just gonna have to do it. So she hangs up the phone, she goes back, and Kevin's in pain. He's like, oh God. He's like, what'd they say? What'd they say? She's like, oh, it's not good. She's like, you're gonna die. So yeah, are there some new things you shouldn't be open to? Yes. Matter of fact, how many of you got into a new relationship or a new job and you're like, why did I jump into this? Here's the point of as we're talking about new opportunities. It's not just anything that feels right or we want to do. I'm talking about living life with Christ as our foundation. I'm talking about looking at life differently. I'm talking about being intentional, building my life, taking the pen and actually giving it to God and saying, God, I am willing to do what you want to do through me. Do you know most people are scared? They're like, well, he's going to make me do this and I'm not good enough. We're going to address that later. But God is not asking you to go out on Scottsdale Road and get hit by a car. He's just saying, look, I want you to love God and love people. What does Pastor Travis talk about for us here? I want to be loving of God, loving of people. I want to grow. There's some of you in here, you put so much intentionality. You have built things in your life. You have built things in your family. You have built incredible things, and that's a good thing. I'm just challenging you today. Is there an area of your life that you need a fresh start in? And I don't want you to wait till yesterday. Do you know that someday is not a day of the week? There is no better time than today to start a fresh start. So I want you to just think about what that means to you. When the Israelites couldn't see their future, God said, let me remind you of whose you are. Can I just remind you? I'm gonna read these words and I want you to just hear from heaven because this is God talking. This isn't just me. I'm not trying to get you positive thinking for you to feel good. I don't want you to feel good. I want you to be good. I want you to live out your life to what God has destined for you. And sometimes when we're in a tough place, when we're in a low place, it's hard to think about a fresh start, but it's easier when you understand the God who's looking down on you and saying, no, I'm gonna reach down. If you just put your hand in mine, we're gonna walk this thing out and you're gonna go to heights you never saw before. In Isaiah 40, 10 through 13, he said this. He said, my people, you are my witnesses and my chosen servant. I want you to know this. He said, I want you to know me, to trust me. Some of you need to underline that, highlight it, circle it, put it on your mirror. Understand that I am alone, I am God. I have always been God. There can be no others. I alone am the Lord, and only I can rescue you. I promised to save you, and I've kept my promise. Until you come to a point low enough in your life to where money isn't gonna fix it, the resources that you have are not gonna fix it. And I've had moments like this in my life. So when I read this, it does mean something to me, not because I'm gonna preach it or teach it, and I gotta make this look good. I'm telling you, there's been low points in my life where God's like, I've been faithful to you. And some of you here, you just need to hear that God, he's reminding you that he's still the same God, that he loves you. And he's still at work, and he's not given up on you. And that he saved you from a lot, and you are not too far from his hand. He said, I'm the Lord, I can rescue you. I promised to save you and I kept my promise. He said, you're my witnesses that no other God did this. This is why sometimes things happen in our life, because we don't need to get the credit for everything. Sometimes we're looking for credit, and it's okay to celebrate. It's okay to write things down of accomplishments. But if I don't put, I need the asterisk on my name, because it needs to be, I'm the face here. But can I just tell you who did it was the God that's in me that's helped make this happen. It's the God that's in me that gave me an intellect. It's the God that's in me that helped connect me with these people. It's the God that's in me that fill in the blank. He said, no other God did this. The Lord has spoken. He said, I am the God now, and same God now and forever. No one can snatch you from me, nor stand in my way. You have a guarantee from God that he will fight for you when nobody else will. When it feels like the whole world is against you, can I just tell you there's a voice from heaven that's championing. You can read Hebrews 11, talk about the champions of the faith, the heroes of the faith that's championing for you and me. Not just to have money, but to live out the purpose and reason why God put us here. So number 2, we need to start with believing Christ is our start. When we think about fresh starts, we start with accepting something new, start with believing Christ is our source. One of my favorite scriptures, Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Not just anything I want to do, but the things that God's leading me to, the things that God draws me to, the places that he puts me, where I'm on the precipice of like, I don't know if this can work out, but God, I'm gonna put it in trust in you. That I'm not saying God is not just like my Instagram app or my real story, like, hey, what's up? No, I love Instagram, trust me. If anybody follows me, you know I do dumb stuff on there. But God's not something we tap into periodically. He's not something we tap into when we feel like it. Now, if you're here, he's open to us, here. He's always here for us. But what I'm trying to challenge you with is going to another level. I'm trying to challenge you with your life and your relationships, your job, your finances, your family, that everything needs to have a source. And if you put yourself in that seat as yourself as the source, you are missing out on the greatest thing that ever touched this planet and the reason why you were put here. That we want to tap into the Lord as our source of everything. Peter, when he's in this situation with the fish, and I talked about that story, that he's touched in such a powerful way. One of the things that's interesting is that he says this. It says after they do this miracle, it says he gets down at the feet of Jesus, and he says, "Go away from me, Lord, because I'm a sinful man." This is this brash, tough guy who's probably used to ordering people around. If you look at his life, he's the first one to spout off. He's the first one to just jump out there and do things. He's a brash dude, but he's somehow touched by the presence of Jesus. Jesus never says to him, yo, you really messed up. Hey, look, right here. Look. You done messed up, man. If you don't get this right, man, you're going to hell. Because you jacked. You don't ever hear Jesus say any of those things. Because you know what? We always see clearly when there's light. If all the lights are in here, we wouldn't be able to see clearly. So when there's light, you can see me. When the lights are on, you can see. And the Bible talks about God as being light. And so what happens is it's not an issue of when we feel convicted or something that's wrong with us. It's not about him pointing his finger at us. It's his presence alone begins to illuminate something in us that's just not quite right. I've told this story before. I go to see Randy Widmeyer, a chiropractor here. You'll see him, he helps serve all the time. Awesome, incredible family here. But he can go and he can figure out when my back's out of, I know I have pain, but I don't know what it is. We can't see it. But so many times I've gone in, he's adjusted, it's like my hips are off or something. But me being off, I just couldn't walk right. It just didn't feel right. Some of you right now, you're living your life and you're waking up and you're like, something don't feel right. And you're trying everything possible. You tried money, you tried sex, you tried relationships, you're on this app, that app, and you're not the terrible person, but you're trying to fulfill something. And I don't know who this is for. This isn't even in my notes, but the answer is really in the source of coming back to a fresh start with God and saying, God, I'm just gonna give the pen to you from now on. Because I need to see the light of where I am. Not that I can feel worse, it's so that I know how to get better. Doctors don't exist to make us feel worse. They exist that we can get better. And Jesus says to Peter, he says, knows how bad he knows how he can be. He knows he's got an attitude. He said, look, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. And what instantly happens, it says that Peter and his brother leave everything. They stop, they bring their boats up, their nets. It says they just literally go and follow him. Look, somebody in here, there is something you need to stop and let go. You might need to text something, you might need to go. Now, don't do something crazy. If you're not sure, talk to a counselor, But no, there's certain things in our lives that God's like, you need to let this go and follow me. And the more you delay it, the harder you're gonna make it. God's not going anywhere, but why waste time? Tomorrow is not promised to anyone. So he goes with this fresh start. And the truth is we have to leave something because we can't be who we're supposed to be and who we used to be at the same time. God is always causing us to look forward. So here's a few things that keep us from doing and entering into a fresh start. I'm gonna give you 3 quick things. You could jot them down. But number 1 is pride and insecurity. Of turning things over to God. Pride and insecurity is a big one because we don't want anybody to think we can't handle it. We want people to think, I got it together. Especially in this culture that we live in, where to seem like something is so much better than to be like something. That's not true, but that's the way a lot of us operate. And when I see God as my source, if I truly see God as my source, then nobody else in this world could ever make me feel small. Understanding and building that truth that you are more than enough, not because of what you have, not because of your shape, or not because of what you look like, not because of your accomplishments, but because of who God says that you are. The second thing is stubbornness. Your unwillingness to change the way you do things. Do you know sometimes the greatest enemy of tomorrow's success is yesterday's success? That somehow we know it all. Somehow we put people in boxes. This happens in relationships a lot where people have been together for a long time and they already know each other. There's a familiarity. Like, well, this is just how I am. This is just how I am. That might be how you are, but maybe what about how God has you to be? Again, not beating you over the head, it's just leading you to the person that's inside of you that's fighting to get out. That's seeing God as my source. This past week I did something really cool. One of our guys here, Jason Snavely, he works at True Spec. And so a lot of you know I'm basically a professional golfer, or maybe you didn't know, but I basically am. With a handicap, clearly. I mean, I could be really good, but you have to practice, and it's a lot of work. So we went over, and they analyze your swing, and they just go through. It was really cool. So they talk about, distance and the right clubs for you and all this stuff. So they're gonna make me a great golfer, supposedly. No, but it was a great experience. It was fun. But there's a saying in golf that just says, the flight of the ball never lies. Let me ask you a question. What's the flight of your life looking right? Your life right now, your relationships, your finances, you keep ending up in the same place? I'm not trying to make you feel, I'm just asking you, it's your life. You get whatever you're willing to settle for. The flight of the ball never lies. So stubbornness can keep us from being what God intends us to be. A man once said, he said, look, I'm gonna be original or nothing. He ended up being both. We're put here on the planet with other people. And God looks at your life and he looks at my life, and we're always in process. In Psalms 81:11 in your outline, it says this, but my people did not listen to my voice. Israel would not submit to me. So I gave them over to their stubborn hearts to follow their own counsels. Who in here ever has made decisions and gone into deals or done things and you never really, either you didn't know or you never asked God about it, you just went and did it? And how many of you that was a mistake of epic proportions? Wish I could get that one back. Write this down, the greatest mistake a Christian can ever make. The greatest mistake I could ever make as a person, as a Christian, is to put my will before God's. It's not talking about a list of right and wrong. I'm not talking about this checklist of how great. I'm talking about my will before the Lord's. And maybe for you, it's just coming back and starting and saying, God, I need a fresh start. I'm gonna start including you in my decisions. I'm gonna start letting you kind of ride the ship. You have to make the decisions, but you and I have access to power. We have access to a source, but if we don't make them the source, it does us no good. It's like having this computer that can do all of these things, but I don't plug it in. I just randomly plug it in when I feel like it. I show up, I feel like it. I'm super low. Oh, it's not working at all. I better plug it in. And you get just enough juice, and then you go along, and then you run out again. It's not meant to just do that. It's just meant to have a way so you can keep it powered and steady. If you feel like you're running on empty, then maybe you're at this point to where you're saying, like, God, help me focus on a fresh start to get back to you being my source. Third one is fear. It's like you can't admit when you've finished all night. It was like Peter was at this place where they fished all night and they came up with nothing. And maybe you're afraid that people will think less of you. If you go, you start showing up at church doing this God thing, let me tell you something. You're not meant to be anybody else. You're not to be me. You're not to be Pastor Travis. Definitely not Pastor Andre, for sure. Please tell him I said that because he may not be here this. I'm just teasing. That's my brother. He gave me a black name, by the way. My black name is Toddrick. So feel free to use it whenever. I don't mind, some of you know my wife, she's very tan. Some would say African American, but it's great because they say black is slimming, so it just seems to work. I know, I'm in so much trouble, I'm gonna stop talking. Well, I said the couples thing is this Wednesday, so I'll be there. Fear, talking about fear, okay. It's time to confess, coming to a place where I confess that my way isn't working. And you can't be afraid because when you put your life in God's hands, that's the best place that you could ever be. Even if you don't have everything you want, you gotta just let the process play out. And these are battles of the Spirit. These aren't just natural, these are battles of who's gonna control your life. Do you know we have enemies of our soul? This isn't just God, I could be my own enemy, but we have enemies of our soul, which I'm gonna talk about what Jesus said to Peter. One of my favorite phrases, and you've probably heard me say this before from Harriet Tubman, is that she said she freed thousands of slaves. Said I freed thousands of slaves. I could have freed more if they only realized they were slaves. Is there something in life that you're slave to? You think you're choosing it. Maybe you can't stop, and maybe it's enslaved you to believe you could never be more, or you could never have more. Can I just tell you something? For some of you, it's time to get free. It is time for a fresh start. And point number 3 is that I start in spite of my hurts, habits, and hangups. I gotta start from where I am. And Peter made a lot of mistakes in his life. He's been called the apostle with the foot-shaped mouth. He was constantly putting his foot in his mouth. He was a guy, if you remember the story of the man walking on the water in the storm, Jesus is out, he comes to them, there's a storm raging, and he jumps out of the boat. He's a fisherman, he's been in storms before, he jumps out of the boat. As long as he keeps his eyes on the Lord, he's fine. But the minute he takes it off and he starts looking at the winds and the waves, he begins to sink, and Jesus comes in and saves him. He's a bold guy. I don't know how many of you would do that, but clearly none of the other disciples, they were like, whoa, this is crazy. Yeah, go ahead, try that. That looks good. 1 second. Okay, Peter, and go. At least he had the guts to do it. In the garden, when Jesus is being taken away and he's confronted, the Bible says that one of the disciples comes up and cuts the ear out, you're not taking him. He's like, ah! That's Peter. And Jesus is like, what the heck are you doing, Peter? Model, and every time I turn around, you're doing something crazy. Calm the heck down. This needs to happen. It goes on, there was even an exchange where Jesus in Matthew 16, he's talking about they're in the upper room, and he starts talking about the need for him to go, to be taken, to die. to go to the cross. He's beginning to tell, this is what needs to happen. And Peter just jumps up, literally cuts Jesus off. He's like, no, that's not gonna happen. I'll do anything you want. And Jesus cuts him off and says, you know what? Get thee behind me, Satan. Think about that. Talk about a smackdown from Jesus. Like, ooh, Peter, not the best time and not the right words. I don't know if you've ever been, if anybody been around a lot of smack talking. I mean, that's almost like somebody coming and giving you yo mama jokes. Remember yo mama jokes? Somebody likes yo mama jokes. You want me to tell one? I have one if you want to hear it. You know I'm going to tell it anyway. No, but your mama's so ugly, she threw a boomerang and it didn't come back. I know. It's terrible. Your mama's so old, she went to the museum. When she walked out, they gave her a birth certificate. Actually, she walked out and the alarm went off. Anyway, I'm gonna stop. But see how I say these obscure, weird things? Clearly, I identify with Peter in some ways. I wouldn't say I'm as brash as him, but I am definitely the type of person who says stuff sometimes. I'm like, why would you say that? And I'm like, I don't know. There's a person inside and I can't get rid of them. All from high school. But the point is that God takes us from where we are. And there's some of us in here where Peter had to learn by going through mistakes. And there isn't a person in here who could come to God and say, look, I get heaven, I deserve this, and because of how good I am. The scriptures say everybody's fallen short. There isn't one person righteous, no, not one. And so we might look at our lives and say, man, but this is you. You kind of have your life together, or look at other people. But can I just tell you something? Even when you make a mistake, you're not a mistake. That failure is not final, failure is not fatal, that with God, he has chosen people, even the broken people in this world, to take their lives and do something extraordinary with it. Because it's when we come to the place of saying, God, I need you, that he actually can do something special, and that we bring all of our stuff with us. There's people even maybe watching, or you have friends, or maybe this is your first time, and you're like, yeah, but I gotta get some stuff together before I can kind of jump in, before I really need a fresh start. There's other people in here, and you don't feel like you deserve it. That you look at your life and you discount yourself. Can I just tell you, the only person that can discount you is somebody else. You have to make a choice to align with God and say, I'm gonna believe what God says about me. I'm gonna believe that the creator of this universe could do something new in my life. If he could breathe breath into man, if he could speak the world into existence, he didn't even need to put his hands on it. Certainly, he can speak to your situation and turn it around. God doesn't look to you and look at you through the worst mistake of your life. He doesn't look through the lens of the worst mistake of your life. Your haters might. Your people online might. Some of your family might look at you and all they see is the mistakes. But the reason God is looking more into your future than your past is because the only thing you have is your future. And that's where he's pulling you and me. And I don't know who needs to hear it. It might just be one person, but God's pulling on you this morning. And I hope that you respond. That it's time for a fresh start. I love what Jesus in Luke 22, 31 and 32, Jesus is sitting at the Last Supper and he says to Peter, he knows Peter's gonna deny him 3 times. And he says to him, Peter, you're gonna deny me 3 times before the cock crows, you're gonna do it. And one of the word means you're gonna disown me. Peter saw every miracle. He was with Jesus himself. And in spite of it, Jesus is looking at him and says, I love you. Matter of fact, he changed his name. Simon meant pebble. But when he changed his name to Peter, it means Petros or Petra, meaning rock. And he said, I'm gonna work through you to build my church. This man that I know is gonna let me down. And this guy that I know, he doesn't even realize he's gonna do it. But in spite of it, my hand is on him. I am not letting him go. And some of you in here, you've messed up and maybe you feel like that little pebble, but God's speaking over your life and he's saying, it's time for a new day. And I see you further than you see yourself. I'm just asking you to put your hand into my hand and let me walk you through it. And he says this to him. He says, Simon, Peter, in Luke 22, he says, stay on your toes. He said, Satan has tried to separate you off from me like chaff of wheat. But Simon, he said, I prayed for you in particular that you're not give in or give out. He said, when you've come through, I love what he said. He said, when you come through this time of testing, turn to your companions and give them a fresh start. When I've shown you mercy, get ready to show somebody else mercy. When I've stood by you, get ready to stand, because who has been forgiven much can forgive much. Who's been through the lowest of the lows knows what it's like and can identify on helping somebody else get through. And I love it because he says, when you get through. He's not like, well, Peter, if you get through this. He's like, no, you're getting through this. And some of you need to know you're gonna get through this tough time. You're coming through this. This is not the end, it's just a new start. And so we're all gonna have failures, make bad choices. But he said, sin is after you. It's a battle for your life. I want to tell a story about a painting. I'd seen this example a couple times, so I just want to share it with you. I mean, I've read these scriptures so many times in my life about Peter, but I'd seen this and I said, this was really powerful and I want to share it with you. And the painting is The Dream by Pablo Picasso. And he painted this painting. This isn't the original, by the way. If it was, I wouldn't be here. I'd be on a yacht streaming with the rest of you at home. No, just kidding. Like, God bless, it's awesome. No. Here's some money. No. So shout out our head of operations the end of this week, Cindy McGee. She painted this yesterday. She came up with a replica, so she did a great job. Powerful. But Steve Wynn, some of you know Steve Wynn, business guy, casino guy, ends up buying this. He loved this because it was called The Dream. He just loved this painting. He collects art. He wanted to have this piece of art. So he gets this art. He buys this art. And it was 2001. He pays $60 million for it. Called The Dream. The Dream. So he goes and pays for it. He's going to end up, in 2006, he ends up connected with Steve Cohen from New York, hedge fund manager, Mets guy. Ends up saying, Steve wants to buy it. So he says, all right, we're gonna sell it. We'll sell it for $139 million. They go to $139 million. A couple days before, he's gonna sell it. Steve Wynn is apparently, as the story goes, he's showing off some of his other paintings. He has some problems with his eyesight and periphery vision. Anyway, he ends up stumbling into the painting. He puts a little silver dollar size hole in the painting. They said you can hear it pop. Like they said, if you were there, it was like, psh. Can you imagine? Oh my goodness. Like, I'm so sorry, Steve. I'm sure it can be fixed. Can I get a layaway program? And I'll pay you in heaven. No, puts a hole in it. Deal's done, right? Deal's shot. God, nobody's gonna pay $139 million for a painting, right? So they end up, deal's done. But Steve's like, I love this painting. I love The Dream. So he goes out and he finds the best conservator they can find, the best restoration specialist, whatever they call those people, and they come back and they put the whole thing back together. Matter of fact, they put it back together so well that you can't see any flaws. They never look better. And he'll come back, even years later, 2013, I think it was, or I don't remember the exact year, but he ends up reselling it to Steve Wynn for $160 million. So it went from 139, that even though it was torn and restored, it was actually valued at more money. And here's the point. I know we're gonna close with this, but sometimes, our lives are just like this painting, where we look at our lives and we see what's on the front, but God is working on the inside. Because from the front, you can't see any of the damage, you can't see what's been fixed, but if you turn it around, you can tell that there's more than what we see to the story. And I want to tell you that maybe you find yourself with a dream. Maybe you find yourself in a place of your life and you feel like, man, there's been holes poked in it. I'm never going to see this happen for me. I'm never going to be able to rebuild again after this. I'm never going to be able to put this back together. Do you have any idea how much this cost me? This is my life and I can't change it. But when we put ourselves in the hands of God, God is able to take the broken things of this world, even the things that other people don't see. He can come in. The Bible talks about the oil and the wine that restores my soul. Some of you have been so thirsty, but I'm here to tell you, God is here in this place. He is here in your home, and he is not going to leave here. If you put your hand in his, he will say, I will restore you. You look at me or Pastor Travis, and you might see something shiny, but if you turn it around in our lives, you have no idea what it cost us to be here. You don't know some of the mistakes or family things that we've had to go through. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just telling you, brother, we all in this together. Sister, we're all in this together, and God loves us all the same, and he can take the broken things and make something amazing out of it and bring more value to your life than you ever thought possible. Some of you, God's gonna do more in your life. You're not gonna look what you've been through. The dream's gonna come back. There's some things that are gonna come back. It's not the time to give up. It's the time to dig back in. It's the time to put it back into God's hands. And we're gonna sing a song this morning. And the song was written by a guy. It's called Nothing Else is the name of the song, but he's a worship leader and he preaches all this stuff. And he said, I found myself on stages and I'm paraphrasing, but found myself on stages and doing things for God and doing all this stuff. And sometimes it was like my relationship with God was about what he was gonna do for me. What I wanna challenge you, just in a moment, we'll sing a song, then I'm gonna close us in prayer. But this is between you and God. That God, I just don't want you to have to compete for my time, God. I don't want you to have to compete for my resources, for my mind space. I don't want you to have to compete with other things in my life, God, that you're the source for me, and that even with my hurts, habits, and hang-ups, you're gonna take me, and I come freely. That I don't just want what's in your hand, but I do want you in my life. It's okay to ask God for things, but he's not Santa Claus. He's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords.